Hey everybody, Damon D here, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be welcoming Mike Vickers from Leather Lung from Boston, the Boston area. How's everything going today, Mike?
Everything's going really good. I'm actually the band. Yeah, our home is definitely considered Boston. But I am currently living in Brooklyn. I've been out here actually for the last 12 years. So that's where I am right now. I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay, New Yorker, awesome.
Yep.
And so then that leads to my first question is everyone in the band based out of New York at this time, or do you go to Boston, or how's that working out?
The rest of the band is from Boston, in the Boston area. Every Our practice space for a long time was actually in Boston. Right now we're in Dorchester, which I guess is still considered a suburb of Boston. But everybody is located in the Boston vicinity. They always have been. I also lived out there. I lived out there for 6 years. But I and grew up Massachusetts, but I lived closer to the city for like 6 years. And like I said, the band started right when I moved out to New York, so our dynamic has always been me traveling back for practices, and I typically get back, once or twice a month, depending on like what stage we're in, whether that's rehearsals or writing.
So we're going to get into the new release that's coming out tomorrow, March 15th. But before we do that, let's just have you give a little sense of Leather Lung and the style of music, and what kind of your influences are, because I'm sure people that might be familiar with the band would probably go in a kind of stoner doom sludge type of vibe, but also there's also some other influences in there as well. So for people that don't know Leather Lung, what would you say is the style of music?
Yeah, no, our influences are all over the map. I think that's why I always sort of land back on calling it like really groove oriented heavy metal. Because people kind of get lost in the weeds with doom metal and stoner metal, and you know,
Sure.
the genre things can obviously be limiting or whatever. But I like to put an emphasis on the fact that it's groovy. So when I'm trying to describe it to people, it's ass shaking, head banging, groovy ass heavy metal. That's typically where I go to to try and describe it.
And then, so from an influence perspective, let's talk about you personally,
Yep.
as the lead vocalist. Can you kind of delve into what are your some of your influences that have created the style of singing that you do in this band, or just your general influences?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have it's like I have specific influences when I envision, what I was going for vocally and things like that, and people I look up to. I certainly have like a range of people. One of them, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, that has always been since I was younger, somebody who I've always like really looked up to, not only just for his stage presence and everything, but just the amount of technique and articulation he does with his vocal. That's a big thing for me, like articulation. So people I want to be up there, screaming my head off, but I also truly do want people to also know what I'm saying. So I put a lot of thought and effort into the lyrics and want people to connect with it. So um definitely like I'd say like that's like one of my bigger like vocal influences. But in regards to like where I musical influences, it ranges from I'm a huge like old school country western fan. I love hip hop, whether it's from the late 80s, 90s up until stuff today. Right before I came on this call, I was listening to this artist called Key Glock. Um, and in regards to all the things that you would assume are influences for La La Lung, it absolutely is. Church of Misery, my favorite band of all time, if you were to ask me, is Electric Wizard. So we obviously, there's a huge love for sludge, the sludgy end of sound and guitar sounds. That's where that influence is coming from. Weed Eater, of course. I always like to throw in there also like Cathedral. In regards to like a band that people might not consider off the tip of their head, like, oh, that we're like heavily influenced by, at least me personally, I can say, is a band like Cathedral, just in the fact that uh they were playing the heavier end of like a heavy sludge guitar sound, but they also
Sure.
had like huge emphasis on dance and groove and actually having like really catchy riffs that you want to move to. So yeah, I know it's all over the place, but
Yeah.
that's where it stems from for sure.
And that's a really interesting answer, because when you first listen to, because I had not really known of the band before someone in PR reached out to me, and their first listen is Oh yeah, I think I know what this is. This kind of harder edge, death, almost vocal style. But then, as you mentioned hip hop, I was like, there was a Beastie Boys kind of vibe running in there. I was like, wait, where's this? It's not Beastie Boys, but it's like there's some Beastie Boys influence there. Just
Yep.
the way that the song and the vocal kind of goes, and you're like, wait a minute, what is this? So it was really unusual. And then with the
I
country
could
piece
just on
too,
that
like
quick point right there. I just want to jump in and say I could say with confidence that my bassist Jesse and guitarist Zach would both be like so hyped to hear that because they are huge Beastie Boys heads, and that's definitely like influence on them in regards to rhythm and movement and bounce. So good
yeah,
call.
yeah, I mean, it's really unique too because you think it's one thing, and then when you listen to it, you're like, wait a minute, there's more going on, but it's not as if somebody's trying to copy one of those artists. You can just kind of hear the kind of undercurrent of it if you're really a music fan, which is cool, which is interesting because obviously, like I said, at first glance, I was like, yeah, doom, stoner, sludge, heavy, kind of aggressive vocal. But then you hear these other things in there, and you're like, well, this is a little bit different than what I was expecting, and that kind of the normal, you know, thing in this kind of genre. So that's totally,
Yeah, no, and I think like when you
different.
think about like the range of our contemporaries and even bands I mentioned, but you want to say like, okay, you're thinking bands like, oh, Iron Monkey, Brain Oil, Buzz Oven, I Hate God, like we said, like we were just saying before, Weed Eater, Church of Misery. Um, not, I don't think any of those bands are they lean a bit more like negative and aggressive in their sound and nature to how they're doing it versus like we're I don't want to say we're certainly not coming at it from a positive sense, but um I don't know, there's we're not coming at it from the same perspective I think a lot of those bands are, or like what we would get compared to, basically. Like, yeah.
Sure, I think there might be a little bit more of a fun, uh,
Yeah, that's
almost
it. That's the
party
fucking word.
vibe.
That's the word. Why was it?
Yeah,
Why was I so lost on that word? It's fucking exactly like we are. That's exactly what it is. You nailed it. Thank you. That's the
it's
word.
fun. Yeah, and we're gonna go talk about that with one of the which I think is it should be the single, which is Empty Bottle Boogie, which is not just an empty title. There's actually some boogie and swing there, and kind of a party anthem, and feel good hit of the spring if you want. So,
Yep. Hell
uh,
yeah.
which is a little different. Um, so let's talk about the recording process. So, how do you guys typically for this, the new release that's coming out on Magnetic Records, I believe. Graveside Grin is the full length. How do you the recording process? Is it everybody gets in a studio space and it's live, or is it Pro Tools and people send files, or is it a combination of both? And do you guys have a producer, or is it self-produced?
We work with this engineer, and you basically I would call him our producer as well. His name's Chris Johnson. He's worked on all of our records, excluding the demo, but the last three, big efforts he has we work with him on, and I guess for the last four records because he did Dive Bar Devil as well. He's a friend of ours and who's just grown to know us really well over the years and understands what we're going for, so we have a really good relationship with him. That's he also does like this is the work that he does, so we're just sort of lucky to be friends with him and land in his lap. In regards to like what the recording actually process looks like for us. Up until this last record, Graveside Grin, we did do all the recordings in the live manner, meaning we're all in the room playing at the same time, and then we'll do punch in for things that were a messed up, a little guitar thing here, a little drum thing here. This last record, because the volume of songs and just like the volume of material and the amount of practice and rehearsal we had going into the actual recording time, we wanted to just literally save time and energy and finally get ourselves like dialed into a click, meaning our drummer like dialed in all the tempos to all the songs. So everybody was practicing to that. And when we recorded, we recorded individually this time, as in we did do one big live scratch thing with the drums, where everybody was playing. So
Yeah.
a lot of that gets ended up getting used too. But everybody went, back and recorded their parts individually, guitars, yada yada, in this session. And just it was just because literally out of like saving time in the studio and making it a little bit more like less stressful for the engineer.
Yeah.
In the past, our efforts in regards to records have been six, maybe six full tracks with like two interludes in there. With this, we went into the studio with 13. We had 12 tracks in one interlude. So it was, and that not all of that even made it to the record. So that was the reason for like going that route on this one. So like I said, it's crazy like how much, and like you say, oh, this is a scratch track or whatever, just so the drummer can have that initial layer. But it's crazy what, if you set up everything right, and it's crazy how much you end up using from that just initial feel.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like you could do the take over and over, but if the feeling is just right, it is what it is. And we're obviously big on feeling. We're not, I said all the things about tempos and clicks and things like that, but it's like if it feels right, that's what the fuck we're going for. So
Yeah. That's cool. That's really interesting. I know that having been in the studio myself, sometimes that scratch track, you get lucky with it too, sometimes where it just
right,
sounds better. And for some musicians, some players, I know that they have a more kind of they're not as structured, so they feel it, they hit it, and that's it. And we just go with that take, and
right,
we don't try to over engineer it and play something a million times, and it kind of loses a little bit of that, especially when you're playing, more sometimes more aggressive music. There's just you just hit that groove and you just go, that's it right there. We don't need to do this again. Where
right.
you lose a little bit when you have to just play it 1,000 times. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Totally hear that. And I'm sure you've gotten the sense, or maybe not, but our thing is definitely we want to capture some of that live energy and live sound. So, it's keeping it loose and just in the feeling and relying on some emotions is kind of what you have to do too.
yeah, definitely. So let's just talk about a little bit about the Boston, New England scene. I know you're in New York right now, but
Yep.
the band's been together since 2012. Is that in some form or another? That's correct.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Um,
what's the scene like now? Because that's about 12 years, so it's probably changed quite a bit, as styles change a little bit. And so speak to that for people want
Yeah.
to know about
Oh
that.
yeah, definitely. Even though like I am here in New York and very much a part of the scene going on out here because I do travel back so much and we play a lot, I still feel very tapped into what's going on back in Boston. And all of us, like I said, grew up in Boston, so I didn't move out here until I was 25. I don't know. That might be a guess. 25. It was in my mid 20s. So I had spent, 25 years, in Boston and, whatever for the last decade, heavily involved in the scene. Zach, myself, and Jesse were in a band previous to that long as well. It was a more like hardcore punk band, a little not playing as much in the metal scene, but um, the scene in Boston, it's like right now, it's in really good shape for heavy music, like that's kind of akin to like what Leatherlung is doing, I guess. Certainly not the same shit, but there's definitely like much more of a vibrant scene for heavy metal right now. Boston's always had like a very strong hardcore punk side to it.
Yeah,
And it still has a very strong. There's a couple of great labels and things that Locking Out, Triple B Records, and things like that, um, that are based out of that area that are creating like a super strong environment for that. But in regards to metal, it's always been like a waxing and waning, or whatever, dipping and diving,
sure,
sort of thing. Um, and when we were first coming around in 2012, um, big influences for us were like Doom Riders, Black Pyramid, Elder, in regards to bands that like in bills that we could maybe find ourselves on or that would make
sure,
sense. Um, and it was weird at that time too. It's just sort of coming off the hype, or that the not hype, the wave of all those amazing bands, Kylesa, Baroness, Black Tusk, ASG, all that stuff that was coming up from the southeast, and it was just creating like a whole scene within itself. That was starting to wane a bit when we were starting to come up. So there was not as for the I would say for the first maybe like 5 or 6 years of the band, we were just throwing ourselves on really any type of bills, whether it be a hardcore bill, a death metal bill, um, just because there wasn't as much of a, like I was saying, like a scene or a lane that would make more sense. But right now, over the last 5 years, I've been saying it's been ramping up and building and building. We play with this band called Mother Iron Horse out of the Salem, Beverly area in Massachusetts. There's an amazing band called Coma Hole, amazing band called Swamp Head, amazing band called Mast, and these are all bands like from New England. And New England is like, yes, it's split up into multiple states, but I mean, because of they're not huge and because of how centrally located the cities are, all those bands can move around. It's a bigger scene than just a one
Sure.
state. That's why it's New England, obviously. But all that to say, right now I feel like it's in the one of the, for heavy metal and in music that's like is similar to Leatherlung is doing excellent right now. There's a really strong scene for it. Kids are We have no problem like filling some of these venues that I've been going to for my whole life. So it's really cool to see.
Cool. That's awesome. And then you mentioned quite a few bands there. And are you doing, or do you see yourself doing any collaborations with those bands as far as maybe split EPs or shows or tours or live streams or anything like that?
Right, right, right. We have done some touring. So we've done some runs with Mother Iron Horse, some 5, 6 day like sort of runs. Um, and in regards to splits and stuff like that, we're definitely always open to doing things like that. We haven't really, put too much effort into creating an opportunity like that recently, but I think once that we get this new record out, we're going to be starting to get itching to continue to have something hot out there. A split or something like that would be a good idea. um yeah, we love collaborating with all those guys, like and girls. Every band that I just mentioned there I consider to be like tight homies, so like people that I could text and be like, hey, would you jump on this bill? Hey, can I ask your advice on this? What did you guys use for this printer or this material, yada yada, stuff like that. So uh, definitely like a strong connection between a lot of the bands. Um, and you
Yeah,
know,
that's really cool that there's the scene. What I think one of the things that people that are in some type of music scene, when you're in a band, is that yeah, there could be a little bit of rivalry, but there's a lot of just helping each other, right? With shows and shirts and, like you said, printing and CDs. Well, back in the day,
yep,
CDs, but just management, all that kind of stuff. Just, you
yep,
want to see lift everybody up.
yep,
That's one of the things I've seen personally playing music is that when you lift people up and open for somebody or they open for you, it's just this cool thing. And then that goes on the rest of your life, like whatever
100%.
you do, right? And you'll always
Yep,
have those people and you'll see them maybe in another part of the country and there'll be this kind of, oh yeah, but remember back in Boston, and I think
yep.
that's one of the cool things about music is that it kind of, that kind of community.
Absolutely. And I've been saying this fucking saying not ad nauseum, but a rising tide lifts all ships. And I just love it so much in this because it really, I don't know why, I do know why. To me, it really just signifies like the energy I'm trying to put forth to other bands that are around us, in the sense that like understanding that if one of us is doing good, all of us is doing good. So like helping
Yeah.
each other, like that's what a scene is, like that's the point of it. You'd assume. Um so I really try and like keep repeating that and reminding myself of that, um just so I'm always extending a hand, and because it's in the end, it's if we all truly believe in this music and we want to see the shows get bigger and more people come out, more people get excited about it, like that's how you do it, by like
Yeah.
keep instilling like this is a good community. you know
Yeah, there's definitely a karma factor in life too. I think that if you
right,
try to do the right thing, you'll probably get ahead, hopefully.
right, right,
Uh,
right, for sure.
but who knows? So let's talk about the new record here, and we're gonna what I'm going to do is play a track from it too. So, um, how many tracks do we have on this new record, and how is it different or better than what you've done in the past?
It's different from what we've done in the past just because of the breadth and width of the material, I guess. It's just our biggest effort yet in regards to having and in regards to a release. It's the most songs we've ever put out at once. It's definitely the most time we've spent on songwriting and putting an album together. Um, and you know, I keep saying this as well, but the other huge thing going into this record was all of the previous records we wrote as a four-piece. For this effort in this project, we decided early on that we were going to bring in a fifth member because we really would just wanted to amplify everything, amplify not only the sound, amplify the talent, amplify the experience, amplify the songwriting, and it did exactly that. Greg, who we brought on lead guitar, has been a friend of ours for a long time. So when the idea came up of bringing on a second guitarist, it was like, oh, we got to ask him. And he immediately came on board and was super dedicated to the cause, and it just lit an absolute fire under us. We've always been charged up, but we've never been able to write at this capacity and been like happy with the material at this capacity since bringing him on and just having another head in the room. So, you know, in combination with having the fifth member and it just being a massive output, I think that's what is the big thing that separates this from the other releases.
Amazing. That's pretty cool. So now what I'm going to do is play a track called Empty Bottle Boogie, and then we'll come back and talk about it in just a second.
We boogie down, down, shaking bones underground. I'm swinging round, round, you gyrate to the sound. Let's break it down, down, hit the floor and rebound. I'm spinning round, round, pass that bottle around. Pass that bottle around, another round. Pass that bottle around, another round. Pass that bottle around, another round. Full throttle with the empty bottle. Swish it around, swing it on down. If you're hellbound, then boogie down, down, shaking bones underground. Swinging round, round, you gyrate to the sound. Let's break it down, down, hit the floor and rebound. Spinning round, round, pass that bottle around. Pass that bottle around.
Okay, everybody, that was Empty Bottle Boogie from Leather Lung, which their new release is out Friday, March 15th on Magnetic Eye Records. It's called Graveside Grin. So, Empty Bottle Boogie, there's a lot happening in this track. I'm going to call it the feel-good hit of the spring. But Mike, why don't you kind of give the audience and everybody kind of what's the idea behind that, and how did that take shape, and what are some of the ideas of that song?
Yeah, oh, I freaking love this song so much. It's just again, like going back to the word we used previously, it's really fun. I don't remember specifically the origin of the riff, but I don't remember who it came out of in the room or like what the specific, but I just remember the feeling of, oh man, this is an anthem. This is like a dance track. Like we can actually make something that like is really going to feel that way. Like it has that energy. So I'm somebody who I'm always writing. But sometimes songs will take shape because of something I'm writing, or songs will take shape, you know, at least lyrically. Well, I'm taking just cues from how the songs sound, you know. In this case, I was pulling the energy from the riffs that I was hearing, you know, in regards to the actually writing like the lyrics to it, and then trying to put some sense to the energy. The song is totally influenced by like empty bottles. Empty bottle is like a classic. I don't know if the word is trope or just like a classic signifier in like all some of my old favorite country songs. Just David Allan Coe, Merle Haggard, George Jones. You'll always hear them referencing the empty bottle. And you know, if you
Yeah.
party or anything like that, you know what the hell I'm talking about. So the empty bottle boogie is just it's just meant to be a raging anthem. It's supposed to like let you off the chain. It's just one of those the big, you know, chorus or whatever at the end is just just basically supposed to be this feeling of like I'm out of my own I'm out of my own again. I'm going to party, you know, the night I'm about to take this night on and I'm just gonna like let loose. And that's the whole vibe of the song. That it's just that shedding skin, letting loose
Yeah.
energy. That's the vibe.
And if people watch the video, which is on YouTube, they'll get that sense too. There's quite a party scene happening there.
Oh
So
yeah.
check
Yep.
out the video. And then one of the things I liked, there's two things I really enjoyed was one was the bass tone is amazing. It's
Yeah.
really good and just
Yeah.
heavy and but also not too bassy. So there's some treble in there. I don't know if he was using a distortion pedal on the bass, but it sounds really good. And then that second vocal that's about 2.5 minutes in kind of
Yep.
gives you a little bit of from the heaviness, it gives you a little
Yep.
bit of break. You're like, oh, it's almost, I don't want to say pop, but it's got a, a higher register and just a
Right. Yep.
cool, really different sound there. So that really interesting.
I'm
So
glad you dug that. They would both be very happy to hear that. Jesse does put a lot of focus on his bass tone and sound, and you know, hearing a compliment like that is great. He uses a bass wah,
okay.
which is some of the ways he gets some of the more wackier sounds, and he does have some distortion on there as well. But yeah, and with the clean singing, you know, we try and interject it when it makes sense. You know, sometimes sometimes you know you other artists maybe try and fit it in ways that feels a little bit forced. We're always just trying to make it slip in a way that feels natural. And if it, you know, we are always looking for opportunities in the songwriting to make it happen. You know, Zach's got a great voice. So you know, when the moments call for it, we try and add it in there. There's a couple moments throughout the record where we try and highlight, you know, his good pipes.
Yeah, it was really, really good, really interesting. And then now we're going to take a look at Spit in the Casket. So everybody check this track out, and we'll come back and talk about this in just a few.
Well, every time I hear your name, I feel my jaw beginning to flex. When anytime I see your face, I feel my fist focus and clench. I'm not coming around no more just to watch you fall. I think I just stay here drinking, ignoring all your calls, tired of your shit. Wouldn't waste my time just fucking over it. Couldn't do it again, so damn easy to quit.
Okay, that was Spit in the Casket. So let's give everybody a little bit of sense of what this song is about and how you wrote it, or just the overall sense of this track.
Yeah. The song itself is about um basically being let down by somebody that you put your trust in. For me, it's specifically about getting out of a toxic relationship that I was in. And but you know, it's maybe I could say it was about one, but I feel like it's about a few different relationships I've had to weave or get myself out of. But basically, yeah, I mean, the gist of it is if you've ever put your trust into somebody or vouched for somebody as your friend or stood up for somebody and then found out that they, you know, weren't the person that they sold themselves to be, or they really let you down in that way after you know, offered them sincere trust. I know I'm getting all serious. No,
That's all good.
you know, no, I mean, you know, it's just about that feeling of fuck you, you know, you did me wrong and now you're out of my life. That's sort of like, that's the gist of the song basically. And it's meant to be ultimately, you know, that long-winded fucking shit that I just said. It's really just supposed to be a catharsis. It's supposed to be
Sure.
feeling of like, you know, both middle fingers raised, you know, I'm better off without you.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is people what's I think is cool is just opening up and letting people know what is that about and where does that energy come from. And so I think that's what people can connect to. And everybody's been in those situations, whether that's relationships or at work or their kids or their grandma or their mom,
Yep.
you know, so there's that. So we're just about at time here. So what I want to do is do you have any social media call outs that people where they could see the band? Is there a YouTube channel? Is there a Facebook page, Instagram? So any social call outs you have?
Oh yeah, definitely. Please go check us out on Instagram, follow us there. We like to do these things on Thirsty Thursdays where I'm shotgunning beer, but we use our Instagram as our main portal to get information out there, that whether that's the flyers, new merch updates, new music updates, posting clips from the videos that are on YouTube. So that's our main portal of socials, the Instagram. If you can give that a follow, we appreciate the heck out of that. And I always try and remind people, whether you like it or not, Spotify may be the devil and the demon that they are, but people are really looking at the metrics in regards to, you know, who's following your band, and that's a huge metric that they look at, the Spotify numbers. So if you like Let Along, add us to your playlists, stream us on there, help us out with the plays. You know, the people who are booking shows, promoters and record people, like when they hear of a new band, they go over to Spotify, they look up, oh, how many monthly listeners, you know,
Yeah,
it is what it is. So I just try and
sure.
remind people of that. If you want to support us, that's the way to do it. You know, head over to Spotify, stream it, head over to Instagram, follow, and you know, we'll try and deliver.
Cool. So I want to thank Mike Vickers out of New York, right now, Brooklyn, New York, but
Yep,
he's a Boston guy at heart with
that's right.
Leather Long. The new record is Graveside Grin, which is out on Magnetic Eye Records, Friday, March 15th. Thanks for joining. This has been Damon D. One World, One Rock.